This is what it feels like inside a super typhoon. The waves crashing, camera shaking as 15 crew members who were working on a barge are just barely rescued from the turbulent ocean. Super Typhoon Haiyan raced across the Philippine Islands, kicking waves up to 19 feet high, winds up to 195 miles per hour. Power lines shredded, leaving millions unable to communicate. And tonight, we dive into the eye of the storm, talking to reporter Lita, who's been there right through it all.
Also experienced on surface, so the houses in the coastal areas are also devastated.
Those winds are so intense, this storm looked like it was headed for strong How is that wind speed measured? It's exhausting for
Good day everyone, we're from 11 ICTC and today we'll be discussing typhoons and hurricanes. What is typhoon? A typhoon is a massive storm system with a circular or spiral structure of severe winds that spans hundreds of kilometers or miles. The winds twist and turn around a low-pressure area. These storms in the Western Pacific are referred to as typhoons. A typhoon is a low-pressure area with high winds. Wind speeds towards the center increase as the region of low pressure becomes stronger. A typhoon is a low-pressure weather system with sustained winds of at least 56 knots near its core, about 105 kilometers per hour. What is a hurricane? A tropical cyclone forms over tropical or subtropical waters, and a hurricane is a type of tropical cyclone. A hurricane is defined as a storm with sustained winds above 74 miles per hour. The Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale assigns a classification or category to a hurricane based on its maximum sustained winds, which range from 1 to 5. Hurricanes arise when warm, moist air rises over sea. Cooler air replaces the rising air. Large clouds and thunderstorms continue to form as a result of this process. What is the difference between the two? Hurricanes and typhoons are both kinds of tropical cyclones. The location of the storm is the only difference between a hurricane and a typhoon. It's a hurricane if the storm forms or moves through the North Atlantic or Eastern Pacific Ocean, and it's named after the Mayan god Huracan. A typhoon is a tropical cyclone that forms or moves through the Western Pacific Ocean. Its name comes from the Chinese words tong, which means east, and fang, which means wind.
Our friendship ceases from now on.
Effects of typhoon. Infamous for their destructive powers, typhoons can generate winds of more than 75 miles per hour and cause major flooding through their intense rainfall and storm surge. People can be killed, injured, or lost during typhoons. Flooding can cause people to drown, houses to be completely destroyed, property to be swept away, and farms to lose all of their crops to the winds and relentless rains. Mudslides and power outages are common. Their effects range from structural damage to trees, watercrafts, and buildings to both immediate and long-term impacts on human life and livelihood. Effects of hurricane. Hurricanes are one of nature's most powerful storms. They produce strong winds, storm surge flooding, and heavy rainfall that can lead to inland flooding, tornadoes, and rip currents. When a hurricane strikes a coastal area, it brings a number of serious hazards. These hazards include heavy rains, high winds, a storm surge, and even tornadoes. Storm surge pushes seawater on shore during a hurricane, flooding towns near the coast. Heavy rains cause flooding in inland places as well. Hurricanes may also destroy energy and chemical production facilities, gas stations, and other businesses, causing the release of toxic chemicals and pollutants into the environment.
Let's move on to the classification of tropical cyclones. There are 5 main classifications of a tropical storm. First is the tropical depression. It forms when a low-pressure area is accompanied by thunderstorms with a maximum of 61 kilometers per hour or less, or 33 knots or less. Next is the tropical storm.
What defines a tropical storm? Tropical storm, a tropical cyclone with maximum sustained winds of 39 to 73 miles per hour, or 34 to 63 knots. A cyclonic storm that originates from the tropics. It is characterized by a low-pressure center and by several thunderstorms that create strong winds and heavy rain. It is also a localized, very intense low-pressure wind system forming over tropical oceans and with winds of hurricane force. An example of this is Hurricane Sandy, a tropical storm occurring in October 2012, started life off the coast of West Africa. It traveled northwest across the Atlantic Ocean through countries such as Cuba, Haiti, and the Bahamas in the Caribbean before hitting the east coast of the USA. It led to a wide range of impact.
A severe tropical storm is a tropical cyclone with the maximum sustained winds from 48 knots, 24 miles per second, or 89 kilometers per hour, to 63 knots, or 32.6 miles per second, or 117 kilometers per hour, near the center.
What is a typhoon? Typhoon is a mature tropical cyclone that develops between 180 degrees and 100 degrees east in the northern hemisphere, a tropical storm in the region of the Indian or Western Pacific Ocean. This region is referred to as the Northwestern Pacific Basin and is the most active tropical cyclone basin on Earth, accounting for almost one-third of the world's annual tropical cyclones. A typhoon is a type of large storm system having a circular or spiral system of violent winds, typically hundreds of kilometers or miles in diameter. The winds spiral around the region of low atmospheric pressure. The water vapor rises to the top of the typhoon along the sides of the eye, then condenses into clouds. An example of this is Typhoons Mangkut, Jebi, Solik, and Yutu that happens in 2018 in the western North Pacific.
A super typhoon is a tropical cyclone with a maximum wind speed exceeding 137 miles per hour. Is given storm signal number 5 and designated a super typhoon. The Manila Typhoon Center, however, considers a system to be a super typhoon once its winds reach or exceed 124 miles per second. Examples are Super Typhoon Goni, 2020 Catanduanes in the Philippines, and 1991's TSU Ring Telma in Ormoc City, Leyte, speeds of 85 kilometers per hour.
A storm surge is a change or an abnormal rise in sea level during tropical cyclones, intense storms, also known as typhoon or hurricane. Strong hurricane winds blow along the ocean or sea surface and cause the water to pile up as it approaches the shoreline. They can lead to extensive flooding and are dangerous for people living in many coastal areas. For example, when Hurricane Katrina approached the US coast in 2005, it generated a storm surge of more than 8 meters in some areas. This led to widespread flooding, including almost all of the city of New Orleans, where the city fences couldn't cope with the water level. More than 1,800 people were killed across the US by Hurricane Katrina, many of them by the storm surge flooding.
Hi everyone, my name is Miko Mogada and my topic for today is storm surge. Negative storm surge is also possible for a negative storm surge to occur when the wind direction blow the water away from the coast, instead causing the sea level there to drop. These are less dangerous than positive storm surge, as they do not bring the risk of flooding, but they can damage ships in port and leave them stranded until the water level rises again. The height of a storm surge depends on many factors, such as the size and strength of the storm, the direction it approached the coast, and the shape of the coastline and seabed. In areas with large tides, such as the UK, the timing of a storm surge is particularly important, and just a couple of hours difference may mean the difference between an area being flooded or staying safe. Additional impact of storm surge include extensive property loss, erosion of beaches, damage the coastal habitats, and undermining the foundation of infrastructure such as railroads, bridge, buildings, and pipelines. Storm surge also pose a serious threat of death by drowning. That's all, thank you.
What causes a storm surge? A storm surge is primarily caused by the relation between the winds and the ocean surface. The water level rises where the winds are strongest. This pushes down the water in the other part of the storm, cause the water to bulge at the eye and eye wall, where the winds have helped add to the rise in the sea level. What is the main cause of storm surge? Storm surge is caused primarily by the strong wind in a hurricane or tropical storm. The low pressure of the storm has minimal contribution. The wind circulation around the eye of a hurricane left above blows on the ocean surface and produces a vertical circulation in the ocean right above. In deep water, there is nothing to disturb this circulation, and there is very little indication of storm surge. Once the hurricane reaches shallower waters near the coast, the vertical circulation in the ocean becomes disrupted by the ocean bottom. The water can no longer go down, so it has nowhere else to go but up in inland. General storm surge occurring where winds are blowing onshore, the highest surge tend to occur near the radius of maximum winds, or where the strongest wind of the hurricane occur.
Today, I will discuss about floods. Every year, emergency caused by weather, climate, and water-related hazard impact communities around the world, leading to loss of life, destruction of social and economic infrastructure, and the degradation of already fragile ecosystem. Between 80 and 90% of all documented disasters from natural hazard during the last 10 years have resulted from floods, droughts, tropical cyclones, heat waves, and severe storms. Floods are the most frequent type of natural disaster and occur when an overflow of water submerges land that is usually dry. Floods are often caused by heavy rainfall, rapids, snowmelt, or a storm surge from a tropical cyclone or tsunami in coastal areas. Flood can cause widespread devastation, resulting in loss of life and damages to personal and property and critical public health infrastructure. Between 1998 to 2017, floods affected more than 2 billion people worldwide. People who live in floodplains or non-resistant buildings or lack warning system and awareness of flood hazard are most vulnerable to floods. There are three common types of floods. Flash floods. Flash floods are caused by rapid and excessive rainfall that raises water heights quickly, and rivers, streams, channels, or roads may be overtaken. River floods. River floods are caused when consistent rain or snowmelt forces a river to exceed capacity. And coastal floods are caused by storm surge associated with tropical cyclones and tsunami. Between 80 to 90% of all the documented disasters from natural hazard during the past 10 years have resulted from floods, droughts, tropical cyclone, heat waves, and severe storms. Floods are also increasing in frequency and intensity, and the frequency and intensity of extreme precipitation is expected to continue to increase due to climate change. And that is flood and the three types of floods.
What causes floods? A flood is caused by a combination of heavy rainfall causing river or oceans to overflow their banks and can happen at any time of the year, not just in the winter. Floods generally develop over a period of days when there is too much rainwater to fit in the rivers and water spreads over the land next to it. However, they can happen very quickly when lots of heavy rain falls over a short period of time. These flash floods occur with little or no warning and cause the biggest loss of human life than any other type of flooding. Coastal areas are also at risk from sea flooding when storms and big waves bring seawater onto the land. The worst cases of flooding may occur if there is a combination of storms, spring tides, and low atmospheric pressure. What are the effects of flooding? Flooding can be very dangerous. Only 15 centimeters of fast-flowing water needed to knock you off your feet. Flood water can seriously disrupt public and personal transport by cutting off roads and railway lines, as well as communication links when telephone lines are damaged. Floods disrupt normal drainage systems in the cities, and sewage spills are common, which represents a serious health hazard, along with standing water and wet materials in the home. Bacteria, mud, and viruses cause disease, trigger allergic reactions, and continue to damage materials long after a flood. Severe floods not only ruin homes or businesses and destroy personal property, but the water left behind causes further damage to property and contents. The environment and wildlife is also at risk when damage to businesses causes accidental release of toxic materials like paints, pesticides, gasoline, etc. Unfortunately, flooding not only disrupts many people's lives each year, but frequently creates personal tragedies when people are swept away and drowned.
First area is densely populated areas. They are at a high risk for flash floods. The construction of buildings, highways, driveways, and parking lots increases runoff by reducing the amount of rain absorbed by the ground. This runoff increases the flash flood potential. Sometimes, streams through cities and towns are routed underground into storm drains. During heavy rain, the storm drains can become overwhelmed or plugged by debris and flood the roads and buildings nearby. Low spots such as underpasses, underground parking garages, basements, and low water crossings can become death traps. Second area is area near rivers. They are at risk from floods. Embankments known as levees are often built along rivers and are used to prevent high water from flooding bordering lands. In 1993, many levees failed along the Mississippi River, resulting in devastating floods. Dam failures can send a sudden destructive surge of water downstream. In 1889, a dam break upstream from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, released a 30 to 40 foot wall of water that killed 2,200 people within minutes. And the next one is civilization under mountains and steep hills. They produce rapid runoff which causes streams to rise quickly. Rocks and shallow clayey soils do not allow much water to infiltrate into the ground. Saturated soils can also lead to rapid flash flooding. Camping or recreating along streams or rivers can be a risk if there are thunderstorms in the area. Ice jumps and snow melt can help cause flash floods. A deep snowpack increases runoff produced by melting snow. Heavy spring rains falling on melting snowpack can produce flash flooding. Melting snowpack may also contribute to floods produced by ice jumps on creeks and rivers. Thick layers of ice often form on streams and rivers during the winter. Melting snow or warm rain running into the streams may lift and break this ice, allowing large chunks of ice to jam against bridges or other structures. This causes the water to rapidly rise behind the ice jump. If the water is suddenly released, serious flash flooding could occur downstream. Huge chunks of ice can be pushed onto the shore and through houses and buildings.
Honey, though our friendship ceases from now on.
Prevention before a flood. To prepare for a flood, you should build an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Avoid building in a floodplain unless you elevate and reinforce your home. Elevate the furnace, water heater, and electric panel in your home if you live in an area that has a high flood risk. Consider installing check valves to prevent flood water from backing up into the drains of your home. If feasible, construct barriers to stop floodwater from entering the building and seal walls in basements with waterproofing compounds.
What to do during a flood? If a flood is likely in your area, you should 1. Listen to the radio or television for the information. Number 2. Be aware that flash flooding can occur. If there is any possibility of a flash flood, move immediately to the higher ground. Do not wait for instructions to move. Number 3. Be aware of stream, drainage channels, canyons, and other areas known to flood suddenly. Flash floods can occur in these areas with or without typical warnings such as rain clouds or heavy rain. Number 4. If you must prepare to evacuate, you should do the following. First, secure your home. If you have time, bring in outdoor furniture. Move essential items to an upper floor. Second, turn off utilities at the main switches or bulbs if instructed to do so. Disconnect electrical appliances. Do not touch electrical equipment if you are wet or standing in water. And that's all you need to do during flood.
After a flood, your home has been flooded. Although floodwaters may be down in some areas, maybe danger still exists. Here are some things to remember in the days ahead. First is avoid moving water. Second, stay away from damaged areas unless your assistant has been specifically requested by police, fire, or relief organization. Third, emergency workers will be assisting people in flooded areas. You can help them by staying off the roads and out of the way. 4. Play it safe. Additional flooding or flash floods can occur. Listen for local warnings and information. If your car is stalled in rapidly rising water, get out immediately and climb to the higher ground. And 5th, return home only when authorities indicate it is safe. And 6. Roads may be steadily closed because they've been damaged or are covered by water. Barricades have been placed for your protection. If you come upon a barricade or a flooded road, go another way. 7. If you must walk or drive in areas that have been flooded. And 8. Stay on firm ground. Moving water only 6 inches deep can sweep you off your feet. Standing water may be electrically charged from underground or ground power lines. 9. Flooding may have caused familiar places to change. Floodwaters often urge roads and walkways. Flood debris may hide animals in broken bottles and causes slippery. Avoid walking or driving through it. And 10. Be aware of areas where floodwaters have receded. Roads may be weakened and could collapse under the weight of a car. 11. Stay out of any building if it's surrounded by floodwaters. 12. Use extreme caution when entering buildings. There be hidden damage, particularly in foundation. That is the prevention after a flood. Thank you.
What is erosion? Erosion is the breakdown of big materials into small pieces. It is also the breakdown of the land masses and the land around you. Erosion refers to the gradual wearing away of soil, dirt, rock, or other land structures over time through natural forces such as water or wind. One example of erosion is the Grand Canyon, which was worn away over the course of tens of millions of years by the Colorado River with the help of winds whipping through the formed canyon. There are four processes of erosion: hydraulic action, abrasion, corrosion, and attrition. Hydraulic action. It is the sheer force of water crashing against the coastline, causing material to be dislodged and carried away by the sea. Abrasion. Abrasion occurs when material being transported wears away at a surface over time. It is process of friction caused by scuffing, scratching, and wearing down, marring, and rubbing away of materials. Corrosion. Corrosion occurs when a rock travels along sea waves and crashes onto a cliff. This process breaks them into smaller pieces. And lastly, attrition. Attrition occurs during rock collision and transportation. Transportation of sediment chips and smooths the surface of bedrocks. This can be through water or wind. That is all about erosion.
What is marine and coastal processes? Coastal processes are the set of mechanisms that operate along coastline, bringing various combinations of erosion, transportation, and deposition. There are different types of coastal processes, which are tides, waves, and storm surge. The first type are the tides. Tides are the rise and fall in sea levels induced by the cumulative impacts of gravitational forces of our moon and sun, as well as the earth rotation. This coastal process causes a periodic change in water level in various parts of the foreshore that are exposed to wave energy throughout the day. The next type is the waves. Ocean waves erode and shape the world's coastline because the water within the wave moves up and down. There will be no ocean wave if there is no wind. Winds blowing over the top of the ocean causes friction between the air and water molecule, resulting in frictional drag that emerges as waves on ocean surface. When the wind blows forcefully, strong large waves are produced. On the other hand, when the wind is weak, the opposite happens. The third and last type is the storm surge. These hazards also recognized as coastal flood or tsunami flood phenomenon. It occurs when the sea rises as a result of atmospheric pressure variation and wind associated with a storm. The severity of which is affected by the depth of orientation of the water body in relation to the storm path, as well as the timing of tides.
Coastal hazards are any phenomena that threaten coastal structures, property, and the environment under extreme weather and water conditions. There are a lot of hazards brought by different marine and coastal processes. These are coastal erosion, movements of sediments along the shore, coastal deposition, submersion, and saltwater intrusion. Coastal erosion is the loss or displacement of land along the coast, as well as the long-term removal of sleeping rocks. Coastal erosion is caused by the action of waves, currents, tides, wind-driven water, waterborne ice, and other storm-related impacts, sediment movements along the shore. In these hazards, sediments are carried by the waves along the coastline. The movement of the material is known as longshore drift. Waves approach the coast at an angle due to the direction of the prevailing wind. The material will be carried at an angle towards the shore by the squall. The backwash then rushes down the beach slope back to the sea. Coastal deposition. Coastal deposition happens when waves lose their capacity to carry or transport sediments or materials because of a reduction in energy. They will drop or deposit its sediments slowly. Deposition happens when the swash
or the waves that rushes or moves towards the lands, is stronger than the backwash or waves rushing back towards the sea. Submersion. Submersion is a hazard when sediment is submerged in water, underwater, and eventually replaced back to its original location. This commonly occurs during intense storms, when sand is pulled or driven underwater, and when the waves come down, it tends to return to its old visible location via wave action. Submersion has the ability to both submerge and construct islands. It has a greater impact as sea levels rise, which can be disastrous for an island biodiversity, like trees, plants, and animals are at risk when submersion happens or when it occurs. And lastly, saltwater intrusion. It is the migration of saline water or flow of saline water into freshwater aquifers, and it can result in groundwater quality degradation, including contamination of drinking water sources as well as other effects. It is a major concern for the most coastal communities since it has the potential to contaminate water supplies and as well as harm agriculture. The availability and or quality of source waters may be harmed by saltwater intrusion through surface or groundwater sources.
愛化して回る感情線ざれ言などは吐き捨てけた